Welcome to the Sea of Startups, where Southeast Asia's startup game gets real. No tech bro fluff, no Silicon Valley cosplay, just bold takes, sharp turns, and unfiltered stories from founders and funders building the future of this region. I'm Kim, the producer and co-founder of this relaunch, and alongside Kevin Brocklin of Indelible Ventures, we're pulling back the curtain on what it actually takes to raise, build, and win in the fastest growing markets in the world. If you're in a game or want in, this is where the real talk happens. If last week was about playing smart with your capital, this week's about playing smart with your stack. These days, we are seeing a quiet reckoning in how software gets built. Not just the AI that automates, but agentic AI that adapts, decides, and acts like a teammate. It's showing up in smarter APIs, the connectors that act and not just connect, and paired with focused tools, it's quietly transforming how teams work. And this isn't the flashy side of tech, but it's a useful side. And it's where the next wave is being built. To unpack it, Kevin sat down with Chris Birrell, deep tech operator and multi-exit founder, to break down what agentic software really means, why the deep and narrow wins, and how C founders can build ahead of the curve. So let's get into it.
In this episode, we're going to be diving into something that's on everyone's radar, AI. But not just any, we're going to get a little bit of context in it. I've got an expert here alongside me. Our guest today is Chris Birrell. He is the founder of FUNC Ventures and a former senior leader across a number of organizations, has gone through multiple exits and is based in Kuala Lumpur, good friend of mine, investing across APAC. Chris, maybe you can give a little bit more flavor to your background than I just did, and thank you for being with us.
Well, thanks very much, Kevin, for the intro. And I must say, I'm a long-time listener, first-time caller of the podcast. So I'm very, very excited to be here. I've been fortunate enough in my career. I moved out to Asia, initially to Hong Kong 30 years ago, and from Australia originally, and really found my legs out here as a technical leader. Was fortunate enough to work for 4 different software companies out here as their head of Asia Pacific, and those companies either IPO'd or were acquired. So I went through 4 exits. The last one, I was the CIO of a company called Bluecoat, acquired by Symantec for 4.5 billion. So these companies became quite big through my career. And what I didn't like about the big companies was they were slow and hard and not very innovative. We actually did a lot of M&A, and I was part of the M&A team. And that's really where I saw the innovation happening. And I really wanted to get back to that early stage where you're actually really disrupting and innovating. So 2019, I left the corporate world, started doing a bit of angel investing, and sort of accidentally became a VC in 2022. That's how it started.
An accidental journey into becoming a VC. So tell me, because I know your thesis on FUNC Ventures, because you and I know each other well. But for those people listening, tell a little bit about what your focus area is and why you accidentally became a VC. But I'm assuming intentionally chose that piece.
Yeah, no, good question. When I was the CIO at Bluecoat, we grew the company from 400 million revenue to a billion revenue across a period of 4 years. And I was the economic buyer of software. I was the guy signing the check to Salesforce.com or the Oracle ERP suite and everything else. And you would sit down with a finance executive once a week for a few hours, go through this massive spreadsheet and go, wow, we spent a lot on software. It's really expensive. My boss, because we were owned by private equity, was saying, how do we cut costs, not spend more? So as a economic buyer of software, I knew I can't just go and buy another SaaS product. If I want to, I've got to turn something else off. So there's a very high bar in selling into me, a very high bar for these sales executives to walk into my office and sell me something new. But what I did notice is that my engineers were signing up to smaller services, things like Jira and Twilio, and adding it into their stack almost under the radar by using, a corporate credit card or what have you. They were kind of bypassing my cost-cutting mechanism, and they were prototyping these products. And then they would bring it to me and say, "Hey, Chris, we're using this API here to do SMSs, and it's a lot cheaper than our existing provider. So we're going to turn that off and we're going to save you this much money." I was like, wow, these APIs are pretty cool. They allow people to sell quickly without having to go through a bureaucratic buying process. So that initially attracted these companies to me as an entrepreneur. But then what happened is these companies became quite important and bigger. So you could do this deep and narrow strategy to get some initial traction, but then you could land and expand. Think of companies like Stripe, where they've come to. They were originally a very simple payment gateway. They now do full stack POS, treasury function, pay out and pay in, and they're a massive company now. So that's what attracted me. It's like the business model, because it was a way for an entrepreneur to build a successful company and not having to go through that painful process of selling a full stack SaaS product with a user interface that required change management into a company. So that's what attracted it to me initially.
Let me ask you one thing, just definitionally. Most of the people listening in are tech founders. There's likely a wide understanding already, but an API, can you explain like super simple layman terms in regards to the examples of the Stripe, the Twilio, etc., how they operate and fit into tech stack as you referenced?
Sure. Put very simply, APIs are how software talks to software. You typically don't have a keyboard and a mouse. You're using code, some kind of software. For example, a iPhone has like the Grab app, right? The Grab app inside the iPhone. The people that built that app, they don't want to go build their whole own mapping technology. So there's an API into the Google Maps software they use to, draw the map and allow you to search an address and figure out the route between address A and address B. So that's an example. So the Google Map itself is embedded in that application, and Google makes money every time somebody uses the Grab app or the Uber app.
It's a way of not necessarily having to build each individual piece. You can use an API to call another software to get it kind of integrated in with it without having to like build every single piece. Although Grab got tired of paying the millions to Google, so they started with Google. Now they've since replaced, but they
Yeah.
were doing it originally.
Yeah, I'm sure they've got their own, or they've probably partnered with somebody cheaper. And it happens in, Twilio was kind of the gold standard in SMS API. When you want to send an SMS for an OTP, use Twilio, but there's lots of other alternative now as well. So that's the example. Carefully, don't limit it to those examples. There's things like plugins as well. Imagine a plugin to Shopify, like a widget that does a charity donation inside the checkout. I like those kind of companies as well, because they're like not pure API plays, they're more platform plays where you're selling that widget across thousands and thousands of different platforms as well.
Super interesting how this has enabled a lot of software layers and the unbundling of the monolith. How do you see this evolving now? Your thesis is likely evolving in the era of more AI, as we're talking about agents that can talk between different software. How are you seeing this evolution, and how are you adjusting your mindset considering this is your core niche?
Yeah, just talking about it more philosophically, I like founders that are deep and narrow. So they're very deep in a particular vertical and very focused. So I invested in one company that does KYC. So they do KYC as a service, and they broker multiple KYC providers. They can do 400 KYC providers across about 120 countries now, I think. Companies called Frankie One. They are very deep, and they really just do KYC. That kind of founder, they're very well positioned to now attack the new emerging market of agentic AI. I don't know. Do you want me to give a quick example of what agentic AI means?
Yeah, let's do that. I think people would benefit from a little bit of definitions here.
Yeah, so everyone understands how the typical kind of AI large language model products like ChatGPT or Gemini works. You ask it a question, and it, using its immense understanding of everything that's ever been written down, comes up with an answer that's usually interesting and accurate and getting better every day. And I think a lot of us use that for things like creating content for English language or foreign language content, images, even movies now, right? If you think about the particular very deep and narrow specific topic, like KYC, an example, the large language model itself cannot onboard my driver's license. It didn't program my driver's license and address into its model, but it may want to be able to embed something into an answer that verified who I am and using my driver's license. So there's multiple ways you can do that. One of the ways is agentic AI. And agentic AI is a long-running process that has the ability to do multiple tasks. So the task might be, I want to give Chris a membership to my gym, and that's going to want to know where I live, want to validate my driver's license and some of my health data. The agentic AI can talk to the KYC provider, do that. It may also go talk to I might give it access to my health data, and then it issue me with a gym pass, and then send me a wallet card for my phone that's got my gym pass in it. Normally, as a programmer, I would program all those steps myself, but agentic AI can actually go and do the whole thing and come back and tell me. And it might have some humans in between that process that interact with it, but essentially it's doing that whole task as a bundle. And then as a user of that agentic AI service, let's say I'm the gym owner and I employed that agentic AI process, I might pay $10 instead of 50 cents to use the API. That's more expensive, but it did the whole thing and I didn't have to worry about going through those steps myself. It almost think for itself, which is kind of freaky, and figure out, okay, this guy's this certain age. Okay, I'm really not interested in what sports he plays. I'm more interested in his health and the condition of his knees are. I can customize my gym package around that. And maybe I want to offer him some stretch classes and physiotherapy. But if it was a younger person, maybe I would be offering them HIIT classes and maybe some invitation to our latest, daytime disco dancing class or something. So you could do very specific things. The AI agent would be making those decisions for itself and also taking feedback and maybe refining it. And when the answer came back to the gym owner using a keyboard or a voice interface, not really sure yet how these things are going to evolve, could say, look, nice try. Can you please go back and modify it in these ways? And it would do that, but then not only would it do that, it would actually become better because it would have learned from its, its mistakes. Rather than computer talking to a computer, it's like human to pseudo-human to computer. My thesis is that the same deep and narrow founder is in the best position to create AI agent itself or the correct interfaces to be able to do what I just described. I'm backing the founders will have the deep and narrow specialized skills within that vertical to transition their API product to agentic AI, or at least become a service provider, which I think is going to become common. I think Della said that the future of software is all agents. I think he said that 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, he said something of that. Any software that is basically a CRUD, which is like the create, read, update, delete sort of database interface, that can be fully replaced by agents. The logic makes sense because, historically we have had robotic process automation, which is very simple rule-based, and it can be something as simple as if an email is received to this particular email account, automatically push it into my CRM. It's an if-then sort of statement. The majority of it has been very straightforward, rules-based. Even on my email, if I haven't received a response within 5 days, send a follow-up email with the following text. you can formulate that robotic process. But when we start entering into this new era, as you're describing it, there's a higher level cognitive order enabling it to actually think at multiple levels along that process, which may no longer be a linear flow. It could end up being multifaceted, much more complex. There's an exciting time to be in the space, but it's still, as you say, deep and narrow. So I'm imagining, and I'd like to hear your views. Does that mean we're entering the age of more verticalization and customization so that we can enable that deeper narrow, no longer one size fits all, same CRM, ERP for everyone, no matter who you are? Are we entering into that, or what is it going to look like?
Yeah. One of the things I always preface people with in terms of the era of AIs, I'm a pretty old guy, and I remember when the internet started. The first browser came out in 1993. Google wasn't even founded until 1998. So I always preface this with we're early stage people. So um, in our portfolio, we try to invest in as many companies as we can, because you really don't know what's going to happen with the market, with timing, with luck, with all kinds of things. But I think something like this is going to happen, and I'm going to try to make some guesses here. You're going to have the very large vertical players aren't going to go away. So you're going to have the Salesforces of the world, the Google Enterprise of the world, even the big behemoths like IBM and Oracle. They aren't going to go away. But what you're going to have is a plethora of these deep and narrow vertical plugins, APIs, agentic AI agents, whatever you call them, become the experts in their field. And what they're really augmenting is services businesses. So I see this as an equivalent of like a company that does maybe company accounting, like auditing a company account. Right now it's done by a human. I think there'll be a lot of vertical AI agents that do most of the work. There'll probably still be a guy at the end that signs off on it, but it'll crawl through the balance sheet, the cash flow statement and profit and loss, and come up with red flags and what have you. So the big guys are here to stay, along with the big LLM. They're obviously investing millions and billions of dollars into. But then you have these vertical players, and there'll be thousands of them, sort of like today's SaaS market. So today's vertical SaaS market will be replaced by vertical agentic AI companies that have their various specialities. I think that's the way it's going to play out. That's an exciting time right now for founders who have specialist knowledge in a particular vertical. I think the founders that I've liked the most are the ones that have got a real bee in their bonnet about something. And they wake up in the morning and they have to fix it. It's like, I can't believe this still works like this. This is so stupid. Let's go fix it. So they will have a particular vertical special field that they work in. I invested in a company recently that does payment gateways for public transport. Very esoteric field where you tap on, tap off a bus. But currently all that's done on-premise hardware. He's building the first world cloud-based system to do it. He's in a great place to build agentic things, like to tell your LLM travel agent, please go buy me a train ticket to Penang. And it will be able to just do that, right? So I think things are going to play out. You're going to the horizontal layer. Most of those guys are probably already either established or extremely well funded, and then you're going to have thousands of these vertical players.
Do you see, out of curiosity, because I like what you're talking about, where it's not necessarily the flashy side of things. It's about solving real problems, getting down into the nuance of it. But when we talk about horizontal versus vertical, historically we've had a very thick horizontal layer. Now, as that starts to thin out because of the availability of tools and resources that we can now go deeper and more narrow, the customization aspect of it. The couple things that I question presently in regards to what is the future hold is a little bit twofold. One is those entrenched players are very good at doing generic use cases. So we have that horizontal layer. But as we start having more prompt-based coding tools that can prompt to action, prompt to build out agents. So the twofold aspect is, are more enterprises doing DIY solutions, do-it-yourself solutions, leveraging on that horizontal layer, then do it yourself for the customization. And then when the elephant walks, the grasshoppers dance. Like the moment OpenAI or Google or Anthropic, the moment their Dev Day conferences, how many AI companies all of a sudden are probably sitting in their offices saying, "Ah, well, maybe we're obsolete now." How do you see the evolution? And that's the point that I'm trying to get at, is finding a defensible space when it seems like barriers to entry are lowering.
Yeah, I mean, I think about this a lot in terms of moats, and a company like OpenAI can wipe out a bunch of companies overnight with a new release. Keeps me awake at night, obviously. I think where the differentiation lies, I think the barrier to entry is something that's unique in terms of its data. So OpenAI can train itself on legal documents. It has access to many, many legal documents. So whenever I see a legal startup that's claiming to, I can create an NDA or whatever, I think OpenAI will be able to do that very shortly. That's not defensible. But when someone is touching some real world ecosystem, whether that be data, like I'm working on a company right now that does electricity calculations based on real-time information coming out of the grid. OpenAI can't do that, right? So something that's connected to the real world is a good example. Something that's connected to IoT devices, like tapping onto a bus. I look for some kind of ecosystem in the space of stablecoin tech stacks are very interesting to me right now. The things that OpenAI or the incumbents ain't going to disrupt, because there is a defensible moat around either the data or the physical aspects or the cryptographic aspects of that tech stack. So I look at the ecosystem is very important.
Let me tie this back into the region where we're both living. My geographic focus is a little bit more narrow than yours, but speaking from this part of the world in APAC, are you seeing any difference in how to drive success relative to Silicon Valley? Obviously, you lived in Silicon Valley, Do you see a difference based upon the geography? And what should founders here be thinking about?
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting question. Because I'm early stage, it's all about the founder. It's all about their personality, their drive, their passion. A lot of the fields I've invested in require deep knowledge. I've tended to find companies in either Australia, New Zealand, or Singapore, but I don't think that's necessarily the right way to think about it. I think many founders in other markets in Southeast Asia, Malaysia, Thailand, Philippines, Indonesia, have very specialized skills in other areas like agri-tech or even things like health tech, recycling. I think there's a lot of potential here. It's really a mindset. I'll give you an example about Australia and their breakout moment a few years ago. This company came out of Sydney called Atlassian, which most people probably identify with Jira.
Yep.
That was a big deal because it created billions of dollars worth of wealth. And you had people coming out of that company, setting up other businesses. Australia's now had big exits, like Afterpay was bought by Square. Canva, although it's still a private company.
A lot of wealth created there,
A lot of
nonetheless.
wealth created there. So there's quite a number of examples. And so the ecosystem in Australia, the entrepreneur has crossed that mental threshold. Yes, I can build a multi-billion-dollar business. I think Singapore, to a lesser degree, with Grab, even though the Grab founders were from Malaysia. But I think it's a mindset, frankly. The world is much smaller place now. I mean, that's a bit of a cliche, but it's true.
Yeah.
But if you have a particular type of knowledge and access, particular type of industry or data or ecosystem, you can be living anywhere now. I think that's not a barrier. I think there's really a mindset and the support of the ecosystem. Sydney, Melbourne, those cities in Australia have massive ecosystems, a lot of great talent in terms of programmers and AI professionals. Malaysia's lagging a little bit in that area. Singapore relatively is doing okay. The population of Singapore is about 6 million. So, Sydney, Melbourne's about the same, 6 million. They also have that kind of mentality. There's not a lot of examples coming out of Singapore either. I think a lot of successful Singaporean entrepreneurs perhaps move to Silicon Valley. but I don't think you have to.
So there's definitely a greater concentration of VC dollars sitting in Silicon Valley. So oftentimes people see it as the pathway to raise rounds.
Yes.
But certainly it's not a necessity to in order to build a successful business. I'm quite aligned with you on that. Let's do a couple of wrap up questions, and I want to get one that's more like inspirational for the founders so that may be listening. So if you had to do call to action for them, what should they be thinking about first and foremost, knowing what you know and based upon your vision for where the market is going?
If you're building a product, that's the pathway to success. That product has to be 10x better than anything else you're up against, not 2x better. Think out of the box. You've got to be very contrarian in a way. Really, really got to search deep within your own knowledge and within your circle of friends and finding that first initial customer or customers. Your product has to be freaking amazing. So amazing that people will go, wow, I'm just going to start using that because it's so much better than anything else. That's the really call to action is don't think 2x, think 10x in terms of your mindset around the products that you're building. You're not trying to create the next cardboard box. You're trying to create the next, way to do like international bank transfer. Look at a company like Wise, right?
Yeah.
I mean, their debit
Still,
cards
still some
amazing.
limitations, but better than what before they existed.
Yeah.
International transfers remains a pain point, but certainly better.
Yeah. So that my call to action is think 10x, not 2x.
Yeah, find real problems to solve. It has to be 10x better. And like the value proposition, especially in the B2B space, are you going to make somebody more revenue, saving them more cost? Ideally, do both. And I would lump efficiency gains into saving the cost and increasing revenue bucket as well. And I love how you already talked about starting niche, going deep and narrow. You can land and expand, find that wedge, that deep narrow, and then you end up building out from there. This has been a fantastic conversation. Look, Chris, where can people find you or FUNC Ventures if they want to connect, pitch you, or just hear your thoughts further?
Just hit me up on LinkedIn, Chris Birrell LinkedIn, or email chris@func.vc.
Fantastic. Thank you very much again, Chris. A big thank you for joining us and making sense of the world of APIs, Agentic AI. I've learned a lot in regards to deep and narrow where the trajectory is going, and look forward to hearing more and seeing how this journey continues.
Thanks, Kevin. It was my pleasure to be on the show.
And that's a wrap for this week on the Sea of Startups. If you're a founder placing your next bet, the answer might be deep, narrow, and agentic. From a $2 billion funding rebound skewed by mega deals, to Jakarta staking its claim as an AI compute hub, to Malaysia's policy push to reboot its VC engine, Southeast Asia's playing its next hand. So next week, we flip the mic again for our monthly roundup, decoding what's been brewing across the region, the capital flows, the founder moves, and the infra arms race reshaping the game. Follow us on Spotify, Substack, and of course, LinkedIn, where the real convos happen. And hey, this message won't self-destruct, but your SaaS tech might. See ya on the next one.